All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Have you guys covered here with the PGA Championship, a live stream, the Wednesday live stream. Going to try to start doing this on a weekly basis, basically to answer your guys' questions, but also give you guys my final thoughts on the week. Should be going live on Twitter and YouTube right now as well. So if you guys have questions on Twitter, I should be able to see them. If you guys have questions on YouTube, I also should be able to see them. Still my second time going live over the past 2 years now for fantasy golf purposes. Been going live for NBA. For the past 2 years now, almost every single night on the Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. So should be good to go here. Just going to be getting into my final thoughts for this week, as well as giving you guys my favorite bets for round one as well. So yeah, if you guys have questions throughout the video, happy to answer those. But just in general, looking at this week, we'll start with the weather. It's funny the amount of tweets that you see for a major that are just not helpful is kind of crazy. Like the amount of weather-based tweets I've seen where people are trying to see if there's going to be an AM or PM advantage. And I'm just looking at them like, we don't have to worry about the wind that much. There's not really much storms in there. And as long as there is not a big wind advantage, the variance should be reduced. There shouldn't be that much variance in terms of stacking like the AM or PM wave. So we don't have to worry about that. And then another kind of just thing to start off the video, I'm just going to kind of recap my thoughts on kind of Rory and a little bit of Scotty. Now, it's impossible to know what to expect from these two. This is from the 905 write up here. So, a lot of people are going to ask, what should you do with Scotty? He's coming in off of having a child, recently. And I'm just like, first of all, somewhat relatively new dad 9 months ago now. I was thinking, I might be able to kind of use my experience to be able to gauge that. And then I'm like, no, I'm not a multi-million dollar person who, has access to other stuff, babysitters and whatnot. But at the same time, I don't know, his wife does not. And the way Scotty talks about his wife is that it almost seems like she really allows him to create that separation from when it's golf time to personal time. And he does a good job at creating that balance and creating that separation. And so I don't know. I don't think we really have to worry about that with Scotty. The biggest thing I'm really worried about is that apparently his caddy, Ted Scott, is going to be, I think it's his son's graduation on Saturday. So he's going to be attending that. That's more my worry, is that Scotty's going to have a different caddy potentially on Saturday, assuming he makes the cut, which we all assume he's going to. So that's my biggest worry there. But I don't think we have to worry about Scotty as well. So want to start with that. And then the Rory stuff, the divorce news. It kind of goes both ways. We have no idea really how to gauge the Rory situation. Sure, we can look at his past two performances and say, he's probably, the divorce news popping up this week, that's probably been something that's been on his mind 6 months ago. And really the door closed on that chapter of his life probably before the Zurich Classic. So it does potentially make sense why he's won. But now the fact that information has been made public, you don't know how he's going to respond to that as well. So it's impossible to gauge that situation. I do expect Scotty to play like he has played, and I do expect Rory to play like he's played more so the last 2 weeks than really the disappointment he was, prior to that, especially in comparison to his expectations for the week. But it's impossible to know. And a little bit we have to worry about what to do with Xander as well, which I put in the write-up, which is just man, another week of not exactly losing a golf tournament, which is, I think, good for his mental fortitude for this week, but not a good thing as well that Rory just went out and beat him. So a little bit concerning there. But yeah, that kind of sums up those general thoughts for this week. So let's go ahead and just jump into really the start of the week. Kind of gave you guys the preview already. If you guys want access to this write-up, you can go ahead and get it. Let's start out with the PrizePicks and Underdog picks as well here. Let's see. We got a question though from Michael. So let's see here. Let's answer this question. Then I'll get into the PrizePicks and Underdog picks here. So let's see. In a pool tournament, need any 6 golfers. Top 4 scores count. Wow. So you can pick anyone at all. I mean, that feels pretty simple. I mean, if it's anyone at all, you go Scotty, Rory, Xander, could go Brooks, Aubert, and then just to get a little bit different, you would go probably Cam Smith. I don't think that many people are going to be on Cam Smith, so you could get a little bit different there. Yeah, I mean, if you can go any 6 golfers, that's what I would go. I mean, Bryson's up there as well. I don't know how many people are going to be on Bryson. But the other news that is worthwhile is Albert just tweeted out that he was good to go apparently as well. So with his knee injury, so we don't have to worry about that, which is nice. But yeah, those six. I mean, the top four are pretty easy, I would say. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into the round one showdown picks, and then just gonna get into everything else as well throughout this video. So let's find that tab. So the issue that I have with this week for props purposes is one, we haven't really seen this course competitively. We don't exactly know how to gauge it. And also the fact that the course is going to be playing more wet in round one and probably round two than they were hoping for. That being the course super and whatnot, and just the PGA of America and whatnot, maybe a little bit softer than they were hoping for. And it's tough to gauge whether that's going to mean because it's wet, the fairways are not going to run out as much, which obviously that would make the course longer. Thus, there's not going to be as many birdie opportunities. At the same time, if golfers are going to be hitting greens with these soft conditions, it's going to be easier for the ball to stick on there. So it's really tough to give you guys an accurate assessment of how I think this course is going to play in round one. That's the toughest part for props purposes right now. And we're not getting big prop line differences really at all between PrizePicks and Underdog. Like we had a couple yesterday. I think it was like Rory and Brooks. Their lines were off by like one between the two sites, but nothing too crazy. I mean, 0.5. This is how it should be. These are the prop line differences that should be occurring in fantasy golf when they do occur. So really not crazy at all. Now, this is one that I don't mind for the over here is Terrell Hatton for over 3.5 birdies or better on PrizePicks. He is someone that I think is going to have a good week. So I don't mind that bet. Also want to call out here Jon Rahm at 4.5 birdies or better on Underdog. That is a bet where I like the under. We haven't exactly seen Jon Rahm do extremely well recently, and that's my biggest concern. But at the same time, I don't know. He's been saying some weird stuff lately. He feels like he's a PGA Tour member still. I don't know with him. The vibes just feel off with Jon Rahm recently. But yeah, it's just unfortunately we just don't have a big edge props wise on PrizePicks specifically. Underdog will take a peek as well. Underdog a little bit of fantasy score wise, but again, I don't need to go too crazy round one wise. I'm not touching Michael Block or Phil Mickelson fantasy score wise. I don't need to go there. Just not touching those. Now, in comparison to how the average golfer is projected to do, and in general, like he should be able to get there, both of them, but we're not touching that. Just as an FYI. Sam Burns, I don't mind for his over fantasy score. He's someone that has seemed like he's been trending in the right direction. And I did mention, yeah, Jon Rahm under 4.5 birdies or better. That's probably my favorite one. I don't really want to touch Aubert for under 4.5 birdies or better. At the same time, if we were going to find a bet, like if you guys are really just want to make a bet on Underdog, that would be the one because, well, he is a little bit banged up. We do have concerns about that knee injury, even though he said it's not a worry. Now, like overall, I don't think we do need to worry about it, but at the same time, it's there. Like there is a slight concern there. From there, nothing. I mean, I do think maybe the fantasy scores are a little bit too high. Like Neiman, this feels too high for Neiman. Victor Hovland, who's been struggling as well, 27, that feels too high for him as well. Those would be two prop bets I don't mind the under with as well. If you guys were trying to find good bets there. And then we did get another question coming in, so let me jump into that. So let's see here. So yeah, this is tough. So basically what to do with Wyndham Clark. Can he bounce back? Is he temporarily broken? Cameron Young, same question. So honestly, this is a great question. And this is a question that I had for myself this week. I put this, I think, in a tweet, and then I also put this in the 9 to 5 write-up as well. It's basically, I think it's both of them. I'll pull it up here on the write-up as well. So here. So Wyndham Clark, I'm not on as much because I am a little bit concerned that he's way too hit or miss right now. At the same time, he could hit this week. Like, I don't think you're on him that much if you are on him. I'm not sure what his ownership is as well. Let's see. Where's that tab? I believe he was one of the better leverage plays, actually, because, yeah, he wasn't looking good. So about 10% owned. Like you don't have to go crazy with it to be overweight on the field. Cameron Young about 11% owned. Both not too bad ownership wise. So like fine GPP plays already. In terms of like being on them, I mean, that was my issue with this whole range. Like Brooks Koepka, Aubert, Bryson, Cameron Young, Tommy Fleetwood, Benny Ann, like they're all great GPP plays. They're all plays that really would not shock you to be in contention on Sunday. At the same time, they do come with some risk. The risk with Cameron Young is that he has been extremely hit or miss. When he's on top of his game, we are getting literally like a runner-up or top 10 finish. We love that there from him. And then Wyndham Clark, let's see, I think he was a lower exposure play. Okay, he was. So yeah, Clark and actually Finau were kind of the same to me. I think those are two more closely related because Finau, this is a course that really should fit his game. And he's much cheaper. I mean, I guess that'd be more compared to Cameron Young then a little bit. I mean, the difference between like Clark, Finau, and Cameron Young, I kind of putting those all together is that Clark has actually won a major, and has at least come up clutch in certain situations. Long answer, they're GPP only plays. You can be on them a little bit. Is this like outright wise there, Paul? Homa and Morikawa, they look like great bets. Is that more outright wise? To me, I have been toying around with the idea of Collin Morikawa as outright bet. At the same time, I do get why you're on Max Homa. Interestingly enough, if you look at like the mold of golfers that are typical winners throughout the past few years on the PGA Tour, it's not like an end-all be-all. Neither of those two pop up in there, either in terms of like the 80th percentile, which is we got 4 golfers that fit that mold, so Wyndham Clark is in that mold. And then you look at the top 70, if that makes sense to you guys, neither of those two are in there. And so that does worry me, but at the same time, Homa's been trending in the right direction. Collin Morikawa's been trending in the right direction. So I definitely get that question. Let's see. Collin Morikawa, 6 straight make cuts. It seemed like he was a little bit broken for a little bit there, but he's certainly been trending in the right direction. Then, Max Homa, it seems like he should win a major, right? It kind of seems like he's the next best player that should be on track to win a major. I don't think that happens this week. More closely watching him to see if we can bet him outright for the U.S. Open. I think that's the approach I want to go with there with him. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump back into kind of the round 1 talk here. And then after that, I'll get into some of my outright bets. So round 1 wise, let's jump into it showdown wise. So we're going to go to the round 1 here and basically just looking at who are going to be the best round 1 showdown plays. That's really as simple as that here. So looking at it in terms of showdown rank, that's really all I care about. And if you guys are doing best ball drafts, you can do this as well. You can use this as well. Basically the exact same way. So some people might see this and be maybe a little bit confused as to why Xander's won. I'm going to be honest, I don't exactly know. I think the data likes him slightly better. Looking at it in terms of, I think Scotty Scheffler, like his missed cut at the PGA Championship like 2 years ago was slight. It doesn't matter. Like Xander, Scotty, Rory, those are the top plays. Aubert, those are the top plays this week already. And that's going to be the exact same situation with round 1. Like you're going to be playing those guys regardless for round 1 showdown. It just comes down to pricing. Like if you can fit those guys into your builds, I would just go based off of how they're priced. Like I don't really care about that. Those 3 are just interchangeable as they are throughout the week. The biggest standouts to me is that a lot of the players that I want to be on for the week, maybe that I might be a little bit concerned with, are players that are popping up. And so what I mean by that is some players I'm a little bit concerned with. Well, Collin Morikawa, Cameron Young, Corey Connor, Shane Lowry, a little bit of Max Homa. Like this is my better way of getting exposure to those guys, because if they hit, well, they typically do hit more so in round 1, which then vaults them to a good week throughout the week. So like players like Corey Connors, where maybe I might not be on him as much as I should be. I forget what I wrote up about him, but basically his results at the past few majors have been concerning enough for me. 12th at the PGA Championship last year. That's basically the best data point that we have for him in terms of majors history. That's the concern with him. But at the same time, we're looking at a 1-round sample. Don't mind getting to him. Shane Lowry as well. And I did like the thought process that I had on Shane Lowry this week. I think at the start of the week, I was not going to be on Shane Lowry. At the start of the week, Shane Lowry very much concerned me. But as the week progressed, and let's just pull him up here on the profile, I kind of like when you look at it form wise, he did just come in off of that team victory from the event with Rory. And so you can kind of write off the bad finish after that. Typically speaking, we expect a player to regress after a victory. That tends to happen. And then if we look at this, like he had good form prior to like two bad starts, over his third and fourth start that we have going into the sample size. So I could kind of write that off because he's not someone that you typically bank on just having top 20 finishes. This is what you want. You want a safe and consistent golfer that when he's on can really pop to give you potentially a victory or a top 5 finish. So in general, he's one that I've gotten on more as we progress, but I do really love the idea of getting exposure to him more so in round 1 because of that. So let's see lineup wise for round 1. Let's I'll jump back into the lineup builder portion of this video, but I just want to like for the main slate, but for round 1 purposes, let's see. I'm just kind of curious as to like who it's going to spit out to us. So we have to start off with 2 data points as always. And so I'm not going to begin to John Rahm or Brooks that much, but I do need to increase Brooks's projection for the live golfers. If anyone's using this, the 905 lineup builder, some of the live guys like Brooks, for example, where he was terrible prior to leaving for live because of his injury on the PGA Tour, his data that's going into the data set does not like him because of that. So if you want to be on him, you're going to have to increase his projection because of that. And it's kind of Brooks anyways, heading into a major, like you kind of just blindly trust him. And so I'm just going to generate this. I'm not going to do any settings, like adjust it. Obviously do that on the back end here. Like you would change 3 unique players is typically what I like to do, about 30% max exposure. And then I do like to do a little bit of randomness typically. I guess we'll just do that. We'll do that real quick. But the lineup that spit out Xander, Young, Hatton, Lowry, Connor, Siwoo. I'm perfectly happy with that. I feel like that's very solid. And again, I don't think we need to factor in an AM PM split really at all this week. If you guys do, honestly, let me know in the comments. I'm not too worried about that. I don't think we need to do that. Now, if you wanted to do that for round 1, you could. Typically, round 1 betting, I'll do that, and I might still do that. But lineup wise, we're getting a lot of Xander, Young, Hatton, Connors. The issue that I have is that I probably do need to lock in at least 10% of Rory and at least 10% of Scotty because I think those two are going to at least show up. So let me do that here. I don't want to break this. Typically, when you start locking in too many players, it can break it, but it worked. So we got 10% of those two. We're at least getting to them. Now we're probably going to be underweight on the field for those two. And Scotty being cheaper on round 1 slate than he is on the main slate, appealing. And same thing with Rory. So maybe we could get to more of those two. But like, I don't want to not be on those guys. So that's probably something I'm going to do after this video. Is I'm going to go back into this and finagle a little bit so I can be on those two a little bit more. And then with that, let's see. Let's get back into the Showdown tab. And I'm actually curious, who are the golfers here that have that early tee time? The early tee times that we could potentially be on. Bryson, Hatton, I don't see Connors having the first round lead. Maybe Benny Ann, maybe Brooks. Yeah, I mean, Brooks isn't a terrible round 1 showdown play as is. Let's take a peek at the odds for Bryson and Hatton to have the first round lead. So just first round lead. Again, could just do early, late. And I wasn't scrolled up all the way. That makes sense. So Xander, Rory, Aubert, Cam Smith also in there. So I wasn't scrolled up all the way. Typically, I just like to do the first 7 in the morning wave. Let's see. So Xander, you could do. We hit him last week. I believe it was 18-1, 19-1 first round lead, which was a nice hit. Could go back to the well with him. And honestly, I don't mind that. I do expect him to continue to play well this week. And so 30-1, that feels pretty good. Rory even at 21, pretty good. And Aubert, and so like this is actually an idea I don't mind. Like if you are betting on Aubert, it's probably the best to do it round 1. Let's say he is a little bit banged up with his knee injury, even though he said it was precautionary. To me, it makes the most sense to be on him early in the week rather than later on the week where maybe that knee injury does start to stack up on him, starts to take his toll, kind of like Tiger with his back injury. Typically, Tiger looks pretty good in round 1, a little bit in round 2, and then he tails off, right? We've seen that time in and time again with him. That could be the approach that we go with Aubert. Like good first round leader bet. If he's, he should be healthy enough to have a good result in round 1. Let's do that. Let's bank on that. I like that. I think that's a good thought process. So maybe he's even someone showdown wise I try to get on a little bit more. I think that's a good approach to go with him. And then yeah, Cameron Smith. I mean, I don't get it. Like the markets just don't like live golfers. When I get into ownership leverage, you'll see he's the top ownership leverage play. This happened at the Masters as well, and he had a sixth place finish. I was super shocked at the lack of love that he got at the Masters, and he was never really in contention, but he was never like a worry. Like he was always a play that we felt good about, and I get he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But man, 55 to 1 first round lead, bet 365. I know a lot of people don't have access to that. So like 50 to 1 on all the other sports books, that's pretty solid. And so I get it. Bryson, his long game, if he's on, he should be able to kind of really dominate this course. But why is there a big difference between Bryson and Cameron Smith? There shouldn't be that big of a difference. So interesting there. Now, Bryson did go off in the Masters, dominating the first round. That was really an outlier round for him. The rest of the Masters, just kind of okay. So maybe there is something there. Maybe there's something to the fact that Bryson going to come ready to play in round one of a major like he did at the Masters, maybe. And then to round it out, 55 to 1 for Terrell Hatton feels pretty darn good. Now, Corey Connor, 71. I don't think we need to go there. I don't. Lucas Glover, I'll mention him outright wise in a little bit here. I don't think we need to do him first round lead wise as well. So definitely interesting there. Let's jump into some three ball bets for round one as well. And then, here we go. And then we'll get into the outright bets. So I don't want to mess with Neiman or Dean here. These two, I'm not. I don't think you need to bet on those two. I would suggest not doing that, honestly. Just I don't know how to gauge those guys. Sure, I know Dean's kind of chalky this week as well. If you're someone that's on him DFS wise, it would make sense to be on him in a three ball betting aspect as well. Like you could roll with that. I guess I wouldn't discourage that, but I'm not there. I'm not there with both of those two. Now Neiman, he's really just basically going against Tom Kim. Gary Woodland has not been playing well. You know, we know the news with him. So I don't know. I'm just skipping on those two. And then from there, it is kind of easier. I mean, Patrick Cantlay has a pretty nice draw going against Willie Z, who hasn't exactly been sharp. He's been a little bit hit or miss. Cantlay is typically a good round one type of scorer. He has been falling off later. So you could roll with him. Rory, going against Justin Rose, DJ, he should be able to beat those two. Very small odds, though, 1.7 to 1. That's okay. We'll take that. Benny Ann, that's where we're starting to. I feel like we're getting a better edge. 1.9 to 1 to beat Bajork and also Eric Cole. He should be able to do that. Corey Connors then feel pretty good about him. 2.4 to 1 to beat Adam Schenk and Nick Dunlap. That feels pretty darn good right there. Then this is funny. I mentioned this on the write-up as well. It's pretty crazy that EVR was the highest priced player on the slate last week. It was a secondary event, alternative event, but at the same time, he is like 5.8. So very much getting disrespected. And if we look at who he's going against here, that's a pretty big edge there. So I don't mind that. And then you could go a little bit further. Typically, I just like to roll with the ones that have about a 40% or better matchup odds ranking. And if you guys are confused at the matchup odds ranking, this is factoring in their ability to tie or win. That's really what we're looking at there. It's not like they have a 40% chance to win their grouping. It's more looking at 40% chance to tie and or win their group. And so like if you compare it against others in their group, and let's do a good one here. Let's go Scotty's group. Like we're going to see it's basically Scotty or Clark versus Harmon. And so that's how I come up with that rating, if you guys were ever confused about that. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the outright bets. And so, again, I'm going to refer to the 9 to 5 write up here in terms of the outright bets that I'm going to be on. And I will say this week feels a lot like last week, where last week I kind of mentioned, and I'll go back to the write up here, is that it felt like it was three people. It felt like three people really had a chance to win: Xander, Rory, and Clark. You could potentially find some long shot bets, but it felt like those three were going to be the easiest ones to be in. I feel that exact same way this week. I feel like it's a three-man race between Scotty, Rory, and Xander. Most people would be like, Xander doesn't have a chance to win. Stop betting him. I don't know. It's just you continue to play well. You continue to put yourself in position to win, you're going to win. I mean, he crushed the field minus Rory last week, right? Like we would all be singing Xander's graces right now if Rory withdrew that week, if he didn't play. And so it's kind of a weird thing like that, right? And then if you're not doing those three, like I do think we need to consider the other three live golfers, kind of their big three for this event, which is Brooks, Cam Smith, and Tyrrell Hatton. Now, Tyrrell Hatton kind of falls under the mold of Xander Schauffele. He's basically that version. Like Tyrrell Hatton never wins, but he does keep putting himself into position to win. Could he potentially fall into a victory? Maybe. In the sense that like Justin Thomas, when he won the PGA Championship, he in a way kind of fell into a victory, got hot on Sunday. Mito really kind of then gave it to him. Will Zalatoris, in a way, I mean, JT definitely won it in the playoff and whatnot, but like in that regard where maybe Xander or Hatton get hot on Sunday, post a low number where they're chasing. That's what I'm saying. I want them to be chasing. And so I could see those guys win. So I'm fine placing those outright bets. It's like, do you want to go Scotty? That's the biggest question mark that I have. So really, this would be kind of like my betting card is just those four. Not getting on Brooks, not getting on I do like Cam Smith. I probably should be on Cam Smith. I don't know. I do think the length might get to Smith's ability to win a little bit. And that's why I kept him off. And we can't be on everyone. And if I'm already betting Rory and Scotty, like you can't load up on too many of the favorites, right? Like that's just dumb. That's not smart betting. And so like that would be the four right there. If you were looking for some longer shot bets, let's just talk about them. Lucas Glover to start the week was 400 to 1. And I know people are like, why the heck would we bet on Lucas Glover? I don't really expect him to win at all. Like, let's be honest there. But like that stood out to me because, well, he shouldn't have been that low for his odds. Like those odds were pretty darn egregious. 400 to 1 when his average odds were like 230 to 1. And so again, I just want to see what his odds are now, if that has been corrected or not. Because Lucas Glover actually ranks out as a pretty darn good play. Now, the issue with Lucas Glover, I mentioned this a couple of times this week, is that when you trust him, that's when he hurts you. And so, yeah, we're still getting 401 now on a couple of sites, PointsBet and FanDuel. So a little bit, his odds have gotten worse. Maybe they want people to bet on him. I kind of see it that way. They're probably trying to get people to bet on Glover because, in all honesty, he doesn't probably have a chance to win. Looking at it, though, like we can get, again, some pretty good odds on him just to make the cut. Like PointsBet, almost 0.7 to 1, which is pretty good odds to make the cut for a guy that ranks out pretty darn well this week. 2 top 20, 6 to 1. Again, those are pretty good odds. Like that's like betting Rory to win this week. So pretty good odds. And you guys might be wondering, well, why do you like Glover? We'll pull him up here real quick. So Glover, especially if you look at like players that have won over their last 20 starts, he ranks out 5th in the field or maybe 6th in the field in players that have won over the past 20 starts. Now, I don't personally like care about that part of it too much. There we go. But it is an interesting stat. I know he got hot at the end of the year last year and winning 2 playoff events in a row, or I think it was 1 playoff event and the event before the playoffs, maybe whatever, two events in a row late in the season. But he's looking like a pretty good play. Like he's been playing well. We see a bunch of top 20 finishes mixed in there. And so like to bet him top 30, make the cut, or even top 40, where we're getting pretty darn good numbers, I like that. And like the events in which he's played poorly at, really not poor. And so decent staff fit. Like there is nothing metrics wise where he suggests that he's going to be bad. Basically top 30 or better in all the key metrics that we're looking at. So again, the issue with Glover is like when he looks like a good play on paper, that's when he burns you. And so a little bit of a concern there. But again, I feel like he's a strong bet to make the cut or top 40. Really just trying to give you guys information to use at your disposal. And then 2 others, Alex Noren and then Akshay. Let's go with Akshay here. So the only like Noren, I like just good form, good staff fit. This would be a good course that fits Alex Noren. He just really has struggled in majors, and so that's kind of my worry with him. But then we look at Akshay. So Akshay is interesting, I would say. You can get him at 125 to 1. And at the start of the week, I did not like this take, but he is someone that has popped up a little bit more than I would have thought. So first and foremost, he does fit like the 70th percentile of golfers that typically win on the PGA Tour. And that's kind of the stat that I'm referencing here. So, a decent play on paper. And that's just interesting to look at. So he's top 30 in the 9 to 5 mile. Really not great, but he has recently won. So you do like that from him. 6 straight made cuts. The thing that I like the most about him is going to be the specialist rating. I wasn't trying to find reasons to play him. They just kind of kept popping up. Like if you look at events where thick rough, and I know the rough isn't as thick now as it was originally expected, but longer scoring tracks, harder scoring tracks, stuff like that. When you look at those data points, he was one that kept popping up. And so the fact that he won the junior, I think it was the junior PGA championship or whatever, it is a little bit encouraging. I can get suckered into that. And again, maybe he's not going to win. Maybe he's not the best outright bet. Maybe he gives you 21 top 5. Maybe he gets lucky in that regard. Don't hate that. Don't love that. I'm more risk averse when it comes to betting. So like a top 20 finish for him, 4-1. Probably don't have access to William Hill, but like, let's see, 3.2 to 1. No, here we go. 3.7 to 1 on BetMGM. Like for him to top 20, 3.75 to 1. Those are pretty good odds. So I really don't mind that there from him as well. So with that kind of concludes the outright bets. Honestly, I don't know what to do with Brooks Koepka. He is my one and done pick. As an FYI, it's simple. You want to play live golfers for your one and done picks. That's why I was able to have a good year last year, one and done wise. So I am kind of cheering for Brooks to win. I just don't know if I want to bet him to win. He is coming in off of victory. The vibes are good for him. This should be a great track for Brooks Koepka as well. So let's take a peek at him just real quick. Like, I get it. People just love to blindly bet him. The odds, if we were getting 21 odds, I'd feel much better about that, but we're not. And then I did mention Noren earlier. All right, wise. And then we'll get into ownership. 150 to 1, like, I don't know. I could be talked into that. I don't mind him for another, let's say top 20 bet as well. 3.5 to 1, that's decent as well. Like, really don't mind those. And make cut wise, if you want to parlay some of those together, not a bad option. Not a bad option to parlay those together. So let's see here. Yeah, we're going to get into the ownership talk. So ownership wise this week, it's not anything critical in terms of golfers that are overvalued this week. That's a good thing. But at the same time, we are getting some undervalued golfers, I'll say. And so people do love to blindly trust Brooks Koepka in majors, and that works out. And so I'm not telling people not to do that. But when we look at the ownership board, especially like Brooks Koepka, who's $100 cheaper than Xander, and Xander's coming in about 3% lower owned. Yeah, let's be overweight on the field on Xander, especially in comparison to Brooks, because that seems to be the battle there. And even Jon Rahm being the same percent owned as Xander, where Xander just continues to produce desirable results. And Brooks hasn't been terrible, was bad at the Masters, but Xander has just been so reliable. Like, why get cute? Like, just be overweight on him, especially compared to Jon Rahm and Brooks Koepka. And that's what the day is telling us. Vegas-wise, they would have Xander as the second best leverage rank play. 9 to 5 data-wise, third best. So a slight difference there, but still pretty darn good, right? So interesting there. Aubert, you get why people are not as heavy on him. And you get why the data would tell you to be on him more. It's not factoring in a knee injury. And Vegas really isn't as well, though. So that is something to monitor. Lower owned, especially in comparison to Brooks, Jon Rahm. So definitely some edge spots there. The interesting thing is, again, Brooks is never going to really, really pop up until he starts getting more starts PGA Tour wise, because again, when he left the PGA Tour, he wasn't playing well. So he's never going to pop up well. But besides him, there's no one that's like egregiously overowned. Like Taylor Pendrith, I get. Mackenzie Hughes, I get. Those are players I'm on. Are they a little bit probably overowned? Probably. Like 5% owned for those two is probably what the data is telling us to be on. But oh well. I get it. Mackenzie Hughes, like top 10 in recent form on the PGA Tour. So he's been playing well. Like and at his price tag, it's easy to get to him, especially if you're playing Rory, especially if you're playing Scotty. Like that's easy. Taylor Pendrith, 4 straight top 11 finishes. So like I'm not talking anyone out of that. Like, that's appealing, and this is a good track. That sets up well for him. Why has he finished well over his past 4 starts? Because they've been tracks that are somewhat similar to this. So I get it. Keith Mitchell, another player that I'm on. Jaeger, his game sets up well for this. Seb Straka, like, those are all players that I am on. And so, like, I get it. So to me, this is more of a let's gain some leverage on the field rather than avoid some of, potentially bad chalk. So like Cameron Smith, yeah, he should be 10% owned. I don't get it. He's been reliable. Let's just do that. He's being valued as a top 30 finisher when you got to ask yourself, is he going to finish better than top 30? If the answer is yes, you should be on him more than the field. And so I'm probably double that. I'm probably triple that, honestly. Like, I don't get it. Overweight on the field. And then Shane Lowry, I mentioned, I don't know if this is where that take came from, to be honest with Shane Lowry, is I saw his ownership and then was like, yeah, let's be overweight on Shane Lowry. Like, I hate that. I tried not to do that. That could be part of it, though. Just as to why I've gone on Shane Lowry a little bit more as the week progressed. That could very much be a variable that's going into this, is a little bit of ownership bias. Like, I hate looking at ownership or hate looking at odds before I give like outright takes. I hate looking at ownership and then getting on a player more or less. Like, I don't really want that to influence me too much. But man, that's super low for a guy that should be a safe play at his price tag. And then, yeah, Xander, O'Bear, we already mentioned. Hideki. It's such a headache with Hideki because he is essentially, if he was healthy, if we could guarantee that Hideki was healthy, he would be a free square. He would be. He just would be. 8.6, definitely too cheap. Hideki has been playing extremely well this season when healthy and reliable. Let's put it that way. He's been very reliable. 13 make cuts on the PGA Tour, basically just a top 30 or so finisher at the majors as well. This is a good track for him. He's just a player that makes a lot of sense if he were healthy, if he didn't withdraw from an event recently. At the same time, who recently withdrew from an event and then had a very good finish the next event? Sungjae Im. Different situations completely, but it wouldn't be shocking. Maybe Hideki just needed a week off. Maybe he does give us a top 10 finish now. Hideki typically does like to get a start in prior to a major, though. So maybe a little bit different scheduling thing. We'll see if that hurts or helps him. And then other ownership plays, like nothing too much. I would say I was a little bit surprised that Tommy Fleetwood wasn't higher owned, but it's a loaded field, right? Like the ownership's pretty much spread out after really the top 3. That should probably be higher owned. So value wise, let's just talk into some value plays here. I don't think we need to go too crazy with that. Again, if you guys have any questions, get those in. Happy to answer those. Let's see. We're getting to the cheat sheet here. So value-wise, anyone below 7K, we'll do 7K because, well, there's golfers that are 5K in the field. So let's just do that. And so looking at it, the data still really likes Chris Kirk. It's not going to like Dean because, well, it doesn't factor in live starts. Adam Shank's the fine play. Struggled at last year's PGA Championship, but he's been playing well. Chris Kirk, stroke skin off the tee really pops. He's a strong play across the board. He really is. He's a player that I worry I'm not on enough because he does pop, especially at a cheap price tag. Like, he's a likely make cut at a cheap price tag. I'm worried I'm not on him enough because, well, no one's on him. And whoopsie, let's take that off. There we go. Sorry about the title there. But yeah, he's just really popping. Like a very safe, reliable player, 6 straight made cuts, desirable finishes, good stat fit, relatively good results at the majors that we're looking at. So he's someone I do think we should be on more than the field. You got Keith Mitchell really popping up as a strong play. I'm certainly overweight on the field with him. Didn't like that he was popping up as someone that's over-owned, but I'm kind of like, whatever. Looking past that, which I will say this year, doing that hasn't exactly worked out. Where like a player where I'm definitely overweight on the field, even though the day is already telling us not to do that, that has actually probably hurt me more than it's helped me. So we'll see. Other plays, Harris English has been playing well this season. He's kind of had a little bit of a comeback season after his dominant run in, what was it, 2021. Kurt Kitayama's a little bit of a popular play, but it makes sense. 6 straight make cuts for him. Produced at the last major. Pretty solid play across the board as well. Tom Hoagie, not bad, not great. Denny, I can't get to Denny this week, but he's not bad. Should be someone that makes the cut for you guys. Very cheap. Again, Lucas Glover just really looks like a stellar play on paper this week. Just when you trust him, that's when he hurts you. So that's a concern. But he's too cheap. Austin Eckroat, very much a letdown last week. Gosh. That's what sucks about no-cut events. It really is, because I have no idea how to gauge his performance last week, because it did seem a little bit like he just stopped caring. And so because it seemed like he stopped caring, like, what do we do with that? Like, what would he have given us if it was a cut event? Like, he probably would have missed a cut, don't get me wrong, but like, it's almost like I'm more penalizing him in my head because he was just so bad for 2 more days, if that makes sense. So, don't need to get there. Chris Gotterup, this is actually a pretty good course for him, coming in off of a victory and really 3 straight decent starts. Like, I don't think we need to be on him, but not terrible. EVR, again, was the highest priced player last week in an alternative field event, and now you get him at 5.7. Like, that's kind of crazy. Victor Perez is fine. Andrew Putnam should be someone that is right around a made cut. Remember, it is T70 and ties this week. So he's someone that's right around a made cut. And besides the team event, really been a stud. He's getting knocked for the team event missed cut. Not the best track for him, but he has been one of the better players on the tour in terms of like value each week, in terms of being underappreciated each week. And really for the past year. So I don't mind him. Mark Hubbard could make the cut. I don't mind that. And then the other play was Mackenzie Hughes. Forget where he's priced at, 5.8. Mackenzie Hughes, and this was shocked. So what I look at is the last 7 starts in terms of recent form. And so Mackenzie Hughes, who hasn't missed a cut over his last 7 starts, is really popping up as a good play. And he hasn't missed a cut in that as well. So he's coming in top 10 in recent form rate. So the reason why I do 7 starts is because doing 1, 2, 3 starts, that's too small of a sample size. You saw there's just variance in that, and it just wasn't a proper sample size. And then 5 weeks is fine, but there's still some, it's so difficult to expect. Still some outliers pretty much. And then after 8 or 7 weeks, it's basically not as relevant. So like 7 was kind of the sweet spot where you get a good long-term form, but also the short-term form in there without going too crazy. So long way of saying Mackenzie Hughes, great form. Great form. No one's denying that. Pretty decent specialist. Like, he's too cheap. He's too cheap for a guy that's playing that well right now. Not a good course fit. Like, you don't expect him to do all too well, but I kind of do expect him to make the cut. And if you can get a made cut out of, like, let's say Mackenzie Hughes, and then Mackenzie Hughes and Lucas Glover to make a lineup work with, let's say, Scotty and even Rory, if you wanted to, like, you could easily make that work. And again, I'm not like encouraging this, but you could. And then you got someone like Taylor Pendrith, kind of a good fit for this course. Again, 4 straight good events. They're not showing the team event just as an FY, but like, it wouldn't be surprising to see him pop at a course that's longer, and he's been hot. So you could play him, and then you have 6.9 left over. Chris Kirk was a play that I mentioned. Like, you could easily make a lineup work with Scotty, Rory, where you aren't sacrificing too much. Like, this is obviously not great because you're getting 4 sub K, 7K plays. I think I said that. 4, yes, sub 7K plays. But it's not terrible. Like, it works. You probably, like, you don't have to just go Scotty or Rory is my point. You can make it work. And so we jump into the last portion of this video, the lineup builder portion. Okay. Again, if you guys have any questions, get those in. Happy to answer those. So that was round 1. And I have not done this yet. I've been a little bit putting it off. I probably shouldn't have been for the main slate. And so once it loads here, there we go. We're just going to run this once just to see which players it's naturally spitting out to us. And so I really do not have a big problem with the players that it's already naturally telling me to get to. Now, I might limit myself to Russell Henley. He's too hit or miss to really trust that much. Alex Noren, I don't need to be on that much. Shane Lowry, I don't need to be on that much. Like, I'm going to limit my exposures to those guys. So I'm actually just going to do that right now for you guys. So here we go. So I'd like to do show usage, and then we got the max ownership here. Let's see. Siwoo, I don't need to be on that much. Definitely don't need to be on that much. Maybe 20%. Let's actually resort to the player pool here. Siwoo. So yeah, about 15 to 20% on for Siwoo. That's how I go about using this mid exposure play for him. So, if I was doing 150 lineups for this right now, probably put him at 15. If I'm doing 20, probably have him at 20% ownership. I'm actually going to do 15 for him. Shane Lowry, 15 for him. Like, it's still overweight in the field. That is the key aspect there. With the Dike, I'm going to be even weight in the field. Like, I don't need to go crazy with that. Same thing. Russ, I'm going to go 10% for him. Corey Connors, again, don't need to be 40% on Corey Connors. That's egregious there. But like 15 for him, I'm fine with that. Hatton, I'm good with. Tommy Fleetwood, don't need to be on him that much. Let's say 25, 27%. He's a strong play. Don't need to be on him that much, though. Cameron Young, way too hit or miss. Don't need to be that overweight on him. 18% for him. So we're already getting it a little bit better. Shane Lowry, Alex Noren. I really don't know what to do with him. It just hasn't been good in majors, but definitely too cheap. Again, resort back to the player pool. Okay, mid-exposure play. So we'll go like 617. Again, going to be overweight in the field. Doesn't really matter. Ludwig, 20%. Feel pretty good about him. Saeed Tagala, I'm not on. So like 5% for him. Adam Scott, don't need to go too crazy with it. We'll go 10% with him. Denny, I'm really not on. But I never like to fully fade a player that the data is telling me to be on. So I'll go 5%. And then, so like Cameron Smith, I want to be on more than that. Kurt Kadiyama, do not need to be on him that much. We'll go 13%. No. We'll go 8. 9. We'll be still overweight on the field. Clark, again, don't need to be going crazy with him. I think Bryson at 10% is fine. Two players that we need to bump up projection-wise, though, Scotty and Rory. And this is kind of the issue. You really need to bump up their projections if you want to be on them. So, like, Scotty, I'm bumping up a crazy amount. And then Rory, also crazy amount. Now, you don't have to do that. You could just lock them into their ownership presents. But that's when you start to do too much. That doesn't really help. So let's see if that worked. So Rory, we got at 25%. Still, I'd say that's fine. And then Scotty, 5%. So even by bumping him up that much, that's how much the data views him being that high priced is a hindrance to your builds. So certainly interesting there. Let's see. I'm going to do a player group rule here. So I want at least one of those in all my builds. So Scotty, Rory, Xander. I want at least one of those guys. I feel pretty good about that. And I think I'm okay just tossing in Smith and Hatton as well into that group. We'll run this first just to see, and then I'm going to toss those two in there. So still 40% Xander. Then we're getting more Scotty, more Rory. So that worked. We're telling the data we want at least one of those guys. So that works a little bit better, but let's see if it works with adding in at least two by also putting in Hatton and Smith. That should work. Okay, so yeah, I'm telling it to do too much now. That's okay. That makes sense. Let's see. Might be able to raise it. Let's see if we do 150 if that works. Might. Because sometimes just doing 20 lamps it's not enough for it to work off of. So let's see. And we did have a couple of questions coming in. How do you feel about, let's see here. So how do you feel about Rory, Fleetwood, and Seb Straka? I'm fine with all of them. They're all in my player pool. Seb Straka, he's a tough one because he's a little bit too high priced. This is something I actually talked about in the write-up as well. He's a little bit too high priced in comparison to some of the other plays. Like, to me, he's very similar to Jaeger and Pendrith in terms of like who I want to be on. And so just go with the cheaper one, if that makes sense. Like, I know Straka's been playing well, but it's just Straka's at a price that I'm like, I would rather go Connors. I would rather go a little bit cheaper with Jaeger, rather get to Siwoo, rather get to Noren. So Straka's just at a weird price. And so it's been difficult for me to get to him. Not a play that I would talk anyone off of. Roy, I'm on. Roy, I have as a core play. Fleetwood, a little bit. I don't know. He's not like a sexy option this week, if you will. But he's good enough. Like he's played really well in the majors. Could be a better stat fit as a whole, but good specialist. You know, producing well in majors, pretty strong form. So like I'm on him a decent amount. So I get that and I like that. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense with the question here. So with the tiers, and then do you like Morikawa or Fleetwood more? Pricing wise, definitely Fleetwood. The day I likes Fleetwood more. It's Fleetwood. Now that's more of a consistency thing. Fleetwood's been more reliable. It does seem like Kyle Morikawa is starting to catch some upside. So yeah, that didn't work because we're just telling it to do too much at that point. So here, we'll take those two off because we're already naturally getting them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Let's try one other thing. I want to see this. So when a lineup includes Scotty, I want to try this. I want at least one of Hughes, Pendrith, Glover, Eric Van Rooyen, Kirk, Mitchell. We'll get those guys in there. And I probably should do this for Rory as well. Who are those? Some of those other names. Seabass, Moore, yep. Kitayama, yep. Again, those guys a little bit more as well. So we'll do that. And we'll do English as well. So this should work. Again, I hate telling it to do too much, but this should work. It's going to take a while, though, because it's 150 lineups now. So let's see here. Colin hot right now, though. He is. Colin's been trending in the right direction. I don't hate Colin. Colin seems like a solid play. Just Colin's a little bit too high priced. It's tough to get to Colin Morikawa when you have shows. Let me get this filter off. So it's tough to get to Colin Morikawa when you have Aubert right there. You have, I mean, Brooks not too higher price, Xander not too higher price, and then you have Cameron Smith who's cheaper, and then Bryson as well. Like it's tough to get to Morikawa when you have players that are, you know, seemingly better plays, and you're not just trying to, I don't want to say capture a little bit of lucky upside, but in a way, kind of that. Like you're trying to capture a little bit of luck in there where he's a little bit better than he's been recently. It's not a bad play. It's not like I would talk you out of him. Max Homa fits that mold as well. So it's not like it's a bad play. It is not liking that. Let's try one other thing. Oh, this is why. That's why. That should work now. Duh. That should definitely work. Give it a second. It takes a while. It's 150 lineups. I'm telling it to do 6 different things. It still didn't work. What the heck? Oh, let's see here. It's making me upset now. Let's see. Okay. That's what it was. That makes sense. Okay. It's because it really wanted to be on Rory and Xander at their projections. It kind of makes sense with what I'm telling it to do. So that makes sense. That's why I don't want to overload it with rules. Oh. Why didn't anyone tell me I did that? I still had it at 2. Oh, that's dumb. That was dumb. Because I had it at least 2, that's why I was messing up. When it should be at least 1. Obviously, when you do at least 2, that's really going to mess with it. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I was so confused there for a second. So yeah, it's naturally going to pull in Hatton more. So let's see here. Let's go back to this. That was annoying. I can't believe I was doing that. Now that's not, what the heck? Let's see. Okay. So that is one thing though, when you're doing these player groups like this, if you set a global max exposure, it will make it more difficult for the lineup builder to work. What you would do is you want to take off the max exposures here and then do it manually for anyone that's being put in too much. Like Hatton, you don't need to be on that much. Then you just do 30%. The days likes them, but like you don't need to be on them that much. Benny and 25%. Harris English, definitely don't need to be on him that much. But like this is how you do that. In theory, it should work. Let's see. So yeah, that's better. And again, Xander, you don't need to be on that much. You could cap his exposure. That's why I don't like to do that too much. Like when I do that, it's literally probably 15% of my lineups. That's a good way to go about doing that. And so like instead of even doing this group, what I like to do is when I'm doing this rule right here, Scotty Scheffler, I'm just going to run out. I'm going to lock in Scotty to my builds. And then I'm just going to run out like whatever percent of lineups that I want with that, if that makes sense. So like this, if I'm doing 150 lineups, those 20 lineups, they all have Scotty in them now. And now we're just mixing and matching those good values. And it's going to naturally spread out the exposure, if that makes sense. But again, I don't know if we need to do that this week. We're going to naturally get to players. I don't mind that rule though. And you could do that, run that again with Rory, which I probably will do. So what I would do is I'm going to export this set of builds, upload that, and I'm going to do another set. And that's how I get my 150 lineups for the week. Let's see here. I want to do one last thing here. I'm going to delete that. I just want to see, because I mentioned last week where this is what I did last week, where I started to finagle way too much with stuff. And because of that, I did not take down the alternative GPP. I finished 8th. That was the one lineup on the top that did not have Chris Goddard up, which was tilting because the data originally had me getting like 30% of him. I like limited my exposure to like 5% of him or 10%. It was stupid. And I got on more of Kelly Kraft, Justin Lauer, who I really liked, but I didn't need to do that. That was dumb. All right. So now the data is getting us 40% Scotty, 40% Xander. That's good. Let's do 150. And then I'll wrap it up here. So again, if you guys have any questions in here, going on an hour now, did not need to be this long, but it's fun. It's fun. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention as well, real quickly, pick six wise, if you guys are running out builds on pick six this week, or bets on pick six, Cameron Smith is at 71.5 strokes. And there's a bunch of other golfers like this as well. But in comparison to PrizePicks and Underdog, they have him at like 70 or 70.5. So that's about a stroke and a half difference. That adds up. So that's not bad. All right. So still generating the 150 here. This is the problem with golf content, is that there's literally what I talk about. I talk about PrizePicks and Underdog. That's one tier of talking about stuff. There's round one showdown. There's betting picks for round one. And then there's the main slate outright bets. There's DFS. And now there's drafting with Underdog and stuff like that. So that's what makes it difficult, guys, is all the little nuances to golf coverage these days. It gets more difficult. And while this is loading, let's try to give you guys another sample build. So let's say you're not getting to Scotty. That makes the lineup process much more simple this week, because a 2.3 difference between Scotty and Xander. And now you're playing Scotty because you're likely locking in a top 5 finish. Like, again, going back to pick 6 here, it's just one way of looking at it. You go to finishing position, they have him at about 5.5, Rory at about 10.5. So the way of looking at it, if you want to look at it this way, is you're basically essentially looking at a top 10 finisher from Rory, top 5 finisher from Scotty, or a top 15 place finisher from Xander. That's not bad. We'll take that. And for what it's worth, they have Lucas Glover on this list for 69.5 finishing position. So that kind of echoes why he's a good value this week. But that's kind of your decision here. Like, do you want to essentially be chasing a top 5 finish from Scotty? That's not terrible. Like, it's not a bad idea. But then if you do this, you're getting a little bit better fill from your lineup, if you will. So like Keith Mitchell, you could go with who I really like. Don't need to go JD Poston there. 7.5. Core Substraka. I know we already mentioned him. Akshay, Norin. Like honestly, if I could get to Corey Connors here, I'd feel good about this one. I'd be good with the week. Let's see if we want to get Corey Connors and then get off of Chris Kirk. Don't exactly love it, but like Kitayama's right there. Like, I'm fine with that as well. Like it works. All right, so the 150 lineups are done. And so when you do that, it's naturally going to give us the players we want proper exposure to now. So 35 of Scotty, maybe a little bit too high. Hatton 30%, Xander 29. The one player that I probably need to bump up a little bit more is Cameron Smith. I really want to be overweight on the field. I don't need to be on Harris English at 20%. That does not feel right. Tom Hoagie at 18%. Don't need to be on him that much. Again, these are the little things I'll change. And I'll get on Rory a little bit more. So yeah, real quickly, we'll just do that. And a way to do that is also a little bit of like 10% randomness as well. But I'm not going to run this during this video. Just it'll take like a minute or two because I'm telling it so much. And yeah, Min Lee definitely don't need to be on. I don't think I'm on him player pool wise. So get off of him a little bit. I think I have that player group off. All right, I do. Okay. So Keith Mitchell, I honestly maybe I want to be in him a little bit more than that. So like 66 for him. Want to be in him more than that. Cap him at like 20. And then Glover as well. Like I need to be on him more than that. Tom Hoagie don't need to be on that much. Again, these are the little things that I'll do to get it the way I want it more so. Like JT Poston don't need to be on that much. Just little things here and there. But yeah, that's going to do it here. I don't think we have any more questions. Appreciate you guys being in here for the live stream. It was pretty awesome live stream, I think. Appreciate you guys being here. Trying to do round 2 showdown coverage as well. It's just so difficult with the timing of it at night and whatnot. So I'll try to come out with that for you guys. Appreciate you guys. Got to 1,000 subscribers on this channel. That is actually really awesome. On the YouTube channel, if you guys are watching on Twitter, obviously you don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I really appreciate that for anyone that's watching on YouTube, the 1,000 subs there. So thank you. Thanks, guys. That's going to be all for today's video, though. Again, if you guys haven't subscribed yet, drop a like, drop a subscribe. Appreciate it. That's going to be all. Good luck for this week in your fantasy golf bets and your DFS builds. All right. Thanks for watching. That's all. And as always, let's keep cashing.